we have to hold everybody accountable. And that's one of the reasons why I keep bringing it up every single day, is because it wasn't just a United States thing. It was a worldwide thing. And not one person to this day worldwide has been held accountable.
We have with us our special guest for tonight, Brad from Five Times August. Brad, welcome to Grand Theft World. I know this is probably like a high mark on your list on your calendar here.
No, thanks for having me. I appreciate
Hey,
it.
yeah, well, thanks for staying up late because sometimes we have to pre-record interviews because people got kids and they're going to bed early and stuff like that. And we don't try to invite guests. I mean, Kurt Metzger is the only person we'll invite on in the middle of the night, but usually we try to keep the guest slot like 10:30, and it's like, something you can still get stuff done the next day. How you doing?
Right on. I'm doing all right. Yeah. Just living life. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, I think that I think I saw first saw you at Timcast, or
Mhm.
maybe it was one of the panel events that I can't remember where I first heard your music, but
Mhm.
I was really excited when Scott's like, "Hey, I got Five Times August on." And I'm like, "Cool,
Oh,
I'm
cool.
gonna get to know his name instead of just having to say Five
Yeah.
Times August all the time." So pleasure to meet you,
Nice.
Brad.
Yeah.
Uh,
Thanks for having me. And thanks, Scott, for hooking this up.
Dude, of course. Well, Brad, I met you in real life. In fact, I have this as a staple of my I don't know if you can see it. I got Silent
Oh,
Retort
nice.
LP in the back. That's part of my set here. But anyway,
Nice.
I've hung out, hung out with you a couple times. And I just have to say, anybody that's not familiar, I mean, how could you not be? But there's nobody in the whole music industry that held the line, called out the bad guys, the criminals more than Brad. And I mean, you got to go follow him on X. It's like the best follow because it's just to this day it's like kind of your theme is like never forget, and then tweeting the insanity of
I
like it's like
know.
never forget. Like there are other psyops that try to adopt the never forget thing, and it's like no,
Yeah.
really we need to never forget this. And so it's hilarious, it's very entertaining, and it's a great follow, you guys, because you're still pushing like you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
like,
still hammering it home 4 or 5 years later, but it's
love it.
like, it's interesting seeing people get mad at me for it now, like that we're in that fight. Like they're like, it's almost like it's time to let it go, and I'm like, no, because COVID almost to me seems like simpler times at this point, because if you look at everything that's been caked on since 2020, 2021 times, it's all like it's so many distractions, one after another, that to me, if we are able to focus on there is plenty to figure out in a lot of rabbit holes to discover and not forget as well. But to me, COVID is like the pinnacle of, if you want to see how bad things are, if you want to find out who the bad guys are and how corrupt the whole system is, we have to figure out what happened during COVID, and we have to hold everybody accountable. And that's one of the reasons why I keep bringing it up every single day, is because it wasn't just a United States thing. It was a worldwide thing. And not one person to this day worldwide has been held accountable for all that stuff that has happened. But yeah, here we are still talking about it. So yeah, it's fun, but at the same time, it's like, I'm just gonna keep posting the same stuff every year until
And it's interesting too because like with this operation, as with all of them, the history books get written a certain way, and if there isn't somebody's voice
right,
out there, continuing to propose an alternative perspective and having all this stuff on the record, then 30 years from now, the history books and the public schools are going to say, "Oh, this horrible pandemic came along, and then they released a vaccine,
right,
saved everybody's life."
right.
Like,
Yeah.
no, you are not going to get away with this.
Right. Yeah,
Like,
that's like one of the reason that's another reason why, like, I keep hammering it home, because I'm like, to me the opportunity is to not let this fall away. Like what a tremendous opportunity we have in front of us to not let this wash away into the sands of time and be rewritten along with the JFK assassination or 9/11, or even going as far back as the Titanic. There's all these decades and decades of conspiracy and what really happened, and we just keep talking about it forever. to me, it's like if we can stay focused on that one area and stand up for ourselves and say we're not moving on until we get accountability for that situation, what a service we would be doing for future generations to say, hey, when stuff like this happens, stay focused on it, don't get distracted, and hammer it home until until we get answers. And that's why I keep doing it. So
Yep. Yep. I mean,
You said the Titanic. What do you know about the Titanic?
I don't know, all sorts of stuff.
That's
I'm just
well,
there's so
you
many
came to the
rabbit
right
holes.
place. You came to the right place.
yeah, this is part of what it is because
Yeah.
I think your music is inspired by your intellect and your
Mhm.
experiential knowledge on these topics in order to write those types of lyrics. You know
Yeah.
about artifacts and quotes and things that have happened. I have
Mhm.
something for you. Have you ever read this book, The Wreck of
No,
the
I haven't.
Titan? Well, it's called the
No.
Titanic, and this book's about
Mm,
a ship called the Titan. But this
mm.
book was written in, wait for it. I put my spectacles on because I'm over 40 now. Boom.
Before it happened, right?
1898. And
1898.
then it
Oh,
was republished
yeah.
in 1912. He's like, oh, big marketing opportunity here, right? And then,
Wow. Yeah.
so it has like the whole thing. She was the largest craft afloat and the greatest of works of men. And her construction and the maintenance were involved every science, profession, and trade known to civilization. It's
Mm.
an unsinkable ship. Spoiler alert: it sinks. And I'm
I
not
think I
saying
have
that.
heard of that book. Yeah.
So there's an artifact.
Hmm.
Now there's other aspects of that story that are interesting. Cecil Rhodes, co-conspirator that did his last will and testament, right? So there's an actual book called The Last Will and Testament of Cecil John Rhodes, published in 1902 when he died. In there, it says he wanted to create a secret society for the purposes of taking over the world on behalf of the British Empire. And in order to do that, they needed to create a secret society to get America back into the empire. So the guy who published that book, William T. Stead, or some people say Steed, he died on the Titanic after he disagreed with the conspiracy that he kicked off. So there's a lot of interesting stuff. Vincent Astor or John Jacob Astor the fourth, I think it was, who was in opposition to the Federal Reserve, he died on that ship too. J.P. Morgan was on that ship and he got off at the first stop. So they used him to be a magnet to get people on the ship. And then you find out there were three ships that were nearly identical: the Titanic, the Olympic, and the Britannic. And that one of them had an accident where the insurance couldn't be claimed. And then the idea was they swapped the ships so they can get their insurance money, or however that worked. Lord Rothschild, this guy, he said, I will not insure the Titanic. I don't think it's an unsinkable ship. What a crazy thing to say, man. They just built this incredible ship. It's the biggest work of man. And he wouldn't insure it. And then the White Star Line that owned the ship is like JP Morgan and Company. So there's like a whole lot of New World Order globalist type of movers and shakers. They don't happen to meet their demise. Other people who were against the agenda happen to disappear. I'm not saying that they took this book and conspired and made a plan and told a bunch of people stories over the years. But even when I was a kid, like the Titanic was an unreachable thing. And, you know, that was just a
Yeah.
sad story. A lesson of like, don't hit icebergs.
Yeah. I've
And
seen
there
this.
might be more to it. That's why I was asking what you knew about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've dabbled in the Titanic rabbit hole, but you see things that pop up every now and again, then you check it out more and more. And I saw something recently about the windows, the shape of the
Yes.
windows
The number of
was,
portholes
yeah.
on the front is how you distinguish the Titanic from the Olympic and the Britannic, because one of them was a mail ship, and so it was like more cargo than niceness. And
Hmm.
the idea was, how many portholes are on the one that sank?
Hmm. Yeah. And so the one underwater is supposedly different windows or something like that. The one that's so I don't know. This is the thing. Is like it's all fascinating, and if you're willing to entertain questioning what's in the history books, then you know, as I think we should. Um, there's just so many avenues to go down and discover, and that's definitely one of them. And again, that's why with the COVID era, it's like I don't want to see it wash away. So 100 years from now, people are like, I heard that there was this rebellious group that was fighting against the vaccine mandates, and like it all just becomes folklore.
Well, that's the thing is like you go back there has always been a contingent. Like we stumbled across the Anti-Vaccination League and the Anti-Compulsory Vaccination League, which started in the 1860s, and we brought it back when I was working with Unjected. We resurrected it and republished a lot, well, reposted a lot of their old writings. So this is like a tale as old as time, and they were using the same language in the 1800s that we're using today, like bodily autonomy, medical freedom. Like this is the language that they were using back then. And it's like with polio, it's like, you look at the graph of when polio was eradicated versus when the vaccine was introduced. It's like,
Look, don't
there's a
read the
different story.
$1,000 Jonas Salk book about his eugenics perspective. It's $1,000, so you don't read it.
Do you have it?
I forget what it's called. I don't have it.
Oh, dang. Okay.
There's
But I know people
no
that do.
PDF file out there
There
of it.
probably is. I don't like reading PDFs though.
Yeah.
I like things
Oh,
that I can
yeah.
highlight.
He's known
Right.
he's known for having like first editions of like all the
Oh,
best.
that's cool.
So it's
Yeah.
All the books, dude. All
That's
the
a
quotes.
thing.
Real quick for the audience, RMS Titanic. The documentaries you could check out is Why They Sunk the Titanic, Titanic Conspiracy, and the best Titanic conspiracy documentary. I will say that there are holes in these documentaries, and I would not take them more than they might be trying, but I wouldn't take their conclusions as gospel because that's not a thing. But on the topic of COVID, Brad, I agree. And I think as I went through at least the first couple months, I was documenting every day, not only the news and what they were doing, but who figured like this was a SARS virus, right? So I knew there was a SARS thing back in 2003. And then I started, because when I realized like there's this thing going on and those who control this place, they're acting like they don't know what's going on. So I felt like if they don't know what's going on, I should figure out what's going on. So I went and I researched. Dr. Didier Raoult was the guy who led the remdesivir trials and the chloroquine trials, and those were the effective things. Now, the problem they found in these research papers, and this was known back then, that remdesivir causes renal kidney failure after 6 weeks, right? And so that's not good. And chloroquine is toxic to the body. But hydroxychloroquine, they find later, and this is known by NCBI and Fauci in 2004. So they know that there are things that can mitigate whatever they cooked up in the lab. But they never tested what they cooked up in the lab. Like they were trying to make this thing. It has to have, I think I covered it in episode 7 of this show where I laid out all the artifacts and evidence, but they had a very specific thing that they knew could shut the whole world down at the same time. Ebola can't do it. And they stated because like the symptoms show up too quick and then it can be isolated. So what they came up with, this is in the Pentagon pandemic planning document. They said the only thing that can cause, because some of these things cause regional downs, like outages. They said the only thing that can shut down the whole world was a novel respiratory coronavirus. And then within like 2 years, we had the COVID pandemic. They said that in a document a year after they had it on the shelf. So my point is you could follow their whole development of how they designed the pandemic from all these various levels, but they never tested a 2-cent drug to see if it could undermine their whole project. And that's how I think we were able to get out of they wanted perpetual lockdowns. Their plan was not for us to be free right now. They're like regrouping and trying to come up with some new bird flu or something else they can scare us with. But I think what you're doing as far as constantly reminding people, like there's a couple reminders. There's a COVID reminder, and then there's also them. What did they didn't say they rigged the election in the Time Magazine article, but they're like, we did it. We adjusted the election for the benefit of the deep state globalists. I mean, so when they admit those things, people need to be continually reminded, like those things happen. We need to maintain our freedom because they're going to come back again. And if we don't learn these stories, like of the 3 little pigs of our society, we're going to end up being one of those pigs with straw or stick houses, metaphorically speaking.
Well, all the infrastructure's there now. So, all they got to do is just reintroduce, something new, and everything that they pulled back a little bit on all of the apps that were in development for vax status and stuff. And, it's all there now, ready to go for whatever they want to do next. And so, that's
what was that
that's
name for
one.
that? They called it the Common Pass that they were designing.
Oh
You
gosh, I
remember
don't
what it?
know because there are so many. I mean, that was all around the world in so many different ways. They actually literally called it Freedom Pass
Yeah.
in some countries, and like that was like another thing where I'm like, they're literally calling it Freedom Pass, and people are like, oh, that sounds good. It'll give me my freedoms.
It's like Patriot Act.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't ring a bell that they have to take it away to give it back to you. It's not ringing a bell. You're not connecting those dots. So yeah, and that's a scary thing. I think a lot of people, what I'm observing right now is that a lot of people have let their guard down since January 20th, and they're not being as vigilant as they should. To me, I'm like, okay, if it's going to be different this time, let's make it different. I'm just find myself in conversations all the time on X where people are like, oh, you got to give it time. These things take time. I'm like, you just spent, I don't even know. Let's just 4 to 8 years saying, trust the plan. We have everything, all this stuff that was like, all we got to do is get them in. And I was like, well, they're in now. So let's see some action on this stuff. And I get it. Sometimes things do take time to get in order. But honestly, I guess it's like this administration can't work fast enough, whether they want to or not, because of all the damage. So like, I don't want to hear any more excuses on, oh, we just gotta, wait a little bit longer. And the whole message since January 20th has been, look how corrupt it's been. Look how terrible it's been. Actually, that was the message, going back to 2016. And still, again, just like COVID stuff, but nobody of substance is really going to jail and being held accountable. They would keep hearing about it and hearing about it. And so,
Yeah, you've
it's
seen more out of Epstein's files from James O'Keefe than you have from Pam Bondi.
right. Yeah, absolutely. So it's like, what are we doing here?
You got
And
Comey's daughter running the Diddy trial,
right.
which is not going in
Yeah.
the government's favor right now.
Yeah. And so it's all these coincidences, same thing with the book you're just reading, it's like, how can you ignore all of these coincidences that just keep lining up, they keep this idea of a show happening. There's a performance, there's orchestration, there's agenda that's being just worked out right in front of us. And I feel like right now it's like it's been very anticlimactic welling up to this moment where, a few years back, if you had said, yeah, Trump's getting back in, RFK is going to be in charge of
HSS.
HSS. I was trying to go through all of the acronyms. But we would have all been like, oh, that's great. Sounds like we're going to get things back in line. And we're just, I don't know. I mean, I don't know where I was going with that. I lost my train of thought. Maybe it's getting too late, but yeah, I just feel like we're
That's my
watching
excuse. I used that excuse last week.
it's late. No, but it does feel like there's certain orchestras. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I was going to say, what I keep seeing, particularly with like the RFK Jr. situation, is, and I want America to be great again. I want America to be healthy again. Who doesn't want those things? But when you're justifying things like the COVID shot not being pulled off, the market date, that should have been a day one thing. Like all these little pieces keep coming into play where I'm like, okay, for a long time I didn't know, is Trump just not, does he just not know that the COVID shot is bad? Is he inside of his bubble too much? But then you hear one by one through different people, no, he knows, but he just won't talk about it. And that does not reflect good on him. And then with RFK Jr., people are like, oh, he's got to play politics. He's got to get. And I'm like, then it's no different than it was before. Why are we all watching this thing play out where we've got 20 years of RFK Jr. saying one message about vaccines, an interview after interview after interview, and now all of a sudden he's changing his tune, and they're like, we're justifying it. We're playing along with this game. And so I'm seeing people get complacent and just enjoying being a part of the entertainment that is at our disposal rather than sticking to, staying focused and just demanding truth and demanding accountability and wanting justice. And so that's where my frustration comes in.
Yeah,
I think part of
where
it's
I'm
the
at right now.
goldfish mentality where people don't have enough recall. Their attention span's not long enough to remember back, hey, wait, and that's a big part of what you're reminding people about, along with the fact that a lot of them aren't very truthful.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. We spent so much time going like, oh, the government's not your friend. And, Trump surrounds himself with bad people. And there's all these things that we're aware of, but if we hear what we want to hear, then that's good enough. There's certain examples that come to mind, but like when we hear what we want to hear from whoever, it's kind of like we've become that complacent and we just let it slide, and then it's putting us into a bad situation. I think that
I think it's time to up our
yes,
self-respect.
somebody says it's called hopium, and yeah, I mean, I think that's what it is. I think we felt for 4 years, particularly throughout COVID and in the Biden administration, we felt like we were losing grasp on this country and we were feeling really low and controlled, and there was a lot of weight on us. So everybody wants to feel like a winner right now. Everybody wants to feel like America's back, baby. And to me, I'm like, look, this administration will be defined by who goes to jail and how quickly they get there. And I see a lot of people justifying it, saying you got to wait till midterms, and I'm like,
dude,
I don't want to wait till midterms. That's just them. That would be an admission that they're playing the game as well. And that's why I don't let it go. I just keep reminding people every day. So
yeah, you're doing a great job, man. You're doing a great job. And like to that too, it's like I was joking before the election. I'm like, God, if Trump gets in, like I can't wait for Operation Warp Speed 2, right? Just joking.
right.
And then like literally day 2 with Larry Ellison, they're talking about AI supercomputer mRNA vaccines.
Right.
Like, okay. What?
Yeah. There's those numbers of things. Having Albert Bourla at the White House from Pfizer, calling him one of the great people, one of the great businessmen, like
Johnson and Johnson, great company, great company.
He
Yeah,
saved their bacon. He saved their bacon. Do you know what I'm talking? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
For the benefit of you and the audience,
I know what
Albert
you're talking about.
Albert Bortaint Borla. You know why he became CEO? See, once upon a time, Pfizer had a problem. It was like 2008, and they went to Albert. He wasn't called Bortaint yet, but they went to him and said, Albert, we have a client, and they make bacon, and testosterone from the hogs gives a bacon a bad flavor. So we need something to chemically castrate these animals that are so similar to human. They do experiments and swap organs and stuff. We need you to chemically castrate these pigs. And Albert Bortaint Borla came up with a solution called Improvac. Improvac is an injection that causes chemical castration. And that is what brought him to be in charge of the mRNA gene therapy experiment. I'm not saying they're connected. I'm saying that's his relevant experience. And they did not tell you that. And they did not tell the Israelis that before they became a petri dish of Bortaint Borla's Pfizer vaccine.
Wow. Yeah.
He was a veterinarian, wasn't he?
Yeah,
I don't know.
He's a veterinarian. And
Yeah.
I had Sully, I think he's in the green room. I'm pretty sure I have the shirt he made for Bortaint Borla. Let me just grab it out of the other studio.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, it's just shocking. And so, but just on to what you were saying, I, that's what I completely agree. That's what I'm saying too about the RFK. Like going into it's like his confirmation hearing. I'm like, I'm rooting for the guy, and I'm just like, bro,
Right.
like
Yeah.
I can't. I don't. I want somebody who's just like, we're in charge now. This is how it's gonna be. Like, don't play politics. You're in charge. Who are you trying to appease?
Right. See,
Yeah.
that's my point is if the illusion is that you are the leader of at the forefront of your organization, then play that up to the fullest extent, because if that's the illusion being played out in front of the American people that hey, he's in charge now, then go act like you're in charge and don't kowtow and say these things that we know you don't mean. And it's very frustrating to watch because I back RFK. I've been a part of the medical freedom movement. I've been in rooms with him in small environments. I've heard him speak. I believe in the guy, but like it doesn't bode well for everything that everybody has worked for and sacrificed. Not, I mean, I'm just a musician. I started speaking out at the beginning of 2021. Now, me and my wife have observed been a part of the medical freedom movement long before that. And there's doctors and nurses and whistleblowers that have risked so much to get us to this point. And a lot of these guys that are in their position right now are there because of these people, because of the risks that they took. And to me, I find it, it's hard because you want to offer grace and you want to say, gosh, you can't, you can't understand what they're going through right now or what they're up against. And I can understand that to a degree, but when you're saying things coming out of your mouth that I know you don't believe in, I just can't stand behind that.
And I just got to give you so much props for that, dude, because, dude, I know you're on like the inner circle with like RFK, Del Bigtree, like you've done a lot of public stuff with them, and I know that you're close with those guys, right? But like publicly, you call that out too. You stick to your principles. You're not like afraid to hurt their feelings or whatever. Like
You're not a flag blowing in the wind.
Yeah, dude, I've always respected that about you. It's like it doesn't matter.
Thanks.
You just speak the truth. You speak your heart, man, and so that's really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I just feel like that's where we have to be. I don't. I it's exactly right. Like some of these people are my friends. And I've gotten to know them, and it's a tough conversation to have. But I just feel like we don't have time to mess around. If we've really got 4 years to make the best of it, I don't want to see. I don't want to see the show anymore. I want us to get in there and start knocking it out and kicking some ass. So.
You got another artifact for us there, Rich?
I do. I just want to close the loop on Borla. I don't always smell Bortaint, but when I do, I use Improvac.
Oh,
nice.
All right, Grand Theft World member Sully. Look at that. You've been immortalized now, Sully. Free Palestine. All right, when, like you said, you came like on the scene for truth music-y type stuff. 2021, right? But obviously you were a musician prior to that. Did you go through a phase of creativity where it's like first, like no one teaches us to be musicians, so you're doing something kind of outside of schooling curriculum to some extent, or did you have school influence for music? And maybe I should ask that question first. Did public schooling influence your music at all?
Only to the degree that I played guitar in high school for the choir band. So,
Nice.
I was basically a self-taught musician, I took a few
because they're not going to teach you
lessons.
how to play what you want to play. You have to play the choir stuff, right?
Yeah. I was just playing whatever was going on in the show, but it gave me some experience to play with the band for the first time and stuff like that. But I was started writing songs, as soon as as soon as I could. When I was around 14, I picked up a guitar at 11, started writing songs around 14. By the time I graduated high school, I knew like, okay, this is my path. This is what I want to do. I was 17, 18. I came up with the name 5 Times August, just feeling like Brad Skistimus wasn't going to be a good promotional name. So my birthday's August 5th. Thought 5 Times August sounded kind of cool. There were bands like Dashboard Confessional that were sort of one guy that were kind of popular at the time with the band name. So I was like, oh, I'll be like that. I'll be 5 Times August. And that name stuck. And so, yeah, I had, right out of the gate, out of high school, I started pursuing a career in music and did local coffee shops and the stuff that you do. And then I made a little EP of songs in 2004 that got discovered by a music supervisor at MTV. And then he asked me if I would send him a copy of the CD for a show that he was producing called Laguna Beach. If you remember that show, it's like a reality teen series. And so I had a song on that first series, and that was sort of my first big exposure. And this was back in the MySpace days. And so I start, the arc of my career is starting out as a naive 17, 18-year-old thinking I got to get my record label and have my hit song on the radio. And as the internet came to prominence and it became this new tool for independent artists, I sort of kept honing in on these new tools and figuring out how I can utilize them, to the point to where when I was finally meeting with record labels, I didn't really want that for myself anymore. And I think that independent spirit, set me on a trajectory to be that kind of artist at the beginning of 2020, 2021, to kind of feel like, you know what, I don't have any major label holding me down or management telling me what I need to say, which was, I think, why you didn't see so many artists in the mainstream speaking up at that time. So yeah, it's been a long journey. I mean, there was a whole, 2 decades prior to becoming a protest artist, which I didn't really think I was, I didn't ever think that was going to be me. I didn't even think that's what I was writing when I was doing it. I was just venting as an artist, because I felt like there was this great chasm of artists not speaking out. And so I just let it loose and, really discovered myself as an artist during that time, as somebody, as an artist that I wanted to be, tapping into, prior to 2020, it was like very, straightforward pop music. And I was writing for those sort of TVs, film commercials, and it's sort of general acoustic pop singer songwriter stuff. And so
Yeah, superficial pays up here, substance and heart pays down
right,
here. But this is
right,
where it's at. And this is where you
yeah,
meet all the other cool people. Because
right,
I know some people like in a similar situation where they're, touring musicians and they've been around the world and they know how to play and they do some protest music. And that's just like, there's only a few people who can do it at that level. And then everyone else is kind of like, well, I got to write jingles so I can go to the bar and play the music I want to play,
hmm,
at night.
yeah,
And
right,
to make it more than a side hustle takes a lot of talent, persistence, tenacity. And you had to, that was it like one of the first times, or had you had other songs that you wrote prior to that? They were like very urgent, passion driven that you can't keep it in. Because I feel like some of your songs post pandemic are like, yes, it's you venting like a volcano
hmm,
vents like that,
hmm,
you know?
yeah.
And did you have that similar inspiration prior to the pandemic, or did it focus you like a lens? Because I saw a lot of like new
Mm-hmm.
artists birthed during that, and it's like people are learning the vent. It's where we get like
Yeah.
an Oliver Anthony music. I forget his real
Hmm.
name, but
Right.
people get to a
Yeah.
point where it's like they can't keep it in anymore, and the art
Hmm.
comes out.
Yeah, I think that's what happened with me. I mean, I was very middle of the road, kind of music. And, when I did write what I would consider a bigger song, it was very optimistic. I always came from it, with the, we are the world perspective kind of thing. It's very like, let's work to build a better world together. And it's very naive. And, that was actually a
I was
turning
alive
point
for
for,
that. Yeah, it was a very
yeah.
naive.
Yeah. But, it was sort of like the idea was, um, I to write. So the first song that I released in that series throughout COVID was a song called "God Help Us All," and it's kind of a long song. It's like 5 minutes or so, and it's just me rattling off what the state of the world for pretty much, and turning it into a prayer. And to say what I was saying in those songs at that time was very new to me, and it was like, oh gosh, what mask up, vax up, get your body trashed up was something my fans hadn't heard me say or were expecting me to say at any point. And so to say those things was jarring to anybody that had been following me at that time, because they were used to these love songs and very optimistic looks on the world. So um, that was actually the song that I released last in 2020 was based on the slogan that everybody was saying at the time. That was, "We are in this together." And I had written a song called "We Are in This Together." I put it out. And then right after that, um, the George Floyd stuff happened, and it just shut me down. I was like, what am I doing? Like this, the world is not what I thought it was, my expectations and awareness of just, this, I thought that the humanity was on a baseline understanding of how we perceive the world. You don't trust the news all the time. You don't trust the government. I thought these were things everybody knew. And all of a sudden I'm seeing, close friends of mine that are believing everything that they see on the news, and that why would the government lie to us? And I'm like, really? So my worldview came crashing down. And then on the other side of that came out all these other songs.
I first discovered you when Sad Little Man came out. That I was like, okay, this is awesome. And one of the cool things too is the video was what really caught my attention too. I was like, that is some like serious editing skills, and I think Rich will really appreciate this. But tell us how you had developed that skill set for making that style of music video for something completely different, and then incorporated it into now your new path you were on.
Yeah. So prior to COVID, I was deep into a family music project that I had started called the Juicebox Jukebox. And that came about as a dad,
That's
as
a
a
good name,
father of
dude.
three. Thank you. I appreciate it. And, I was putting out like the most pure stuff I could put out into the world, these songs about being thankful and kindness. And they were songs of substance that I wanted parents and teachers to enjoy the music just as much as the kids. And I was trying to make something cool for family entertainment. And during that time, I had developed this. I was doing a song and a video for the Juicebox Jukebox, and I was teaching myself this animation skill for these videos that were very, cut and paste and crafty looking, but they were kids videos. And so, cut to a few years down the road, now I'm writing Sad Little Man about Anthony Fauci, and I'm illustrating this side of me. And I've got this new set of skills to sort of make these animated videos. And so Sad Little Man, it's an animated video that depicts Fauci as a snake oil salesman. And that song came out in at the end of 2021, when he was on his pedestal, at the highest of his godlike image in media. And so that song itself, put me on another level of censorship and suppression that I had only heard about. And then all of a sudden you can't find that video online. I can't find my own video on YouTube, and Wikipedia takes my page down all of a sudden soon after that. And I'm like, what's going on here? So that was an awakening moment to really step forward and call somebody out, that most people, that was the thing, was like, I knew I was calling out somebody that most people liked. And I was really going to be, stepping into a certain kind of mess. I thought it would either fall away and people wouldn't pay attention to it. But that song in particular, Glenn Beck shared it, which really pushed it into the stratosphere of, going viral.
Yeah, it's got 500,000 plus views over here.
Yeah, I shared that with
that
that's
video
after
style.
it got taken down.
That video style I call jib jab. There used to be
Yeah.
videos back in the day, and then jib
Yeah.
jab I think took it from Terrence and Phillip, the floppy-headed Canadians.
Oh yeah,
right?
sure.
Terry Gilliam.
Yeah. All those things, they were kind of in my mind as I was working on those videos, but it all just sort of came about ironically through this children's music project. So it couldn't have been more bipolar of a situation to go from light and airy and catchy and over here, and then going over here. But what's funny about Sad Little Man though is after performing so many rallies and stuff around the world, I've had parents come up and with their kids, and they're like, oh, my kids love Sad Little Man. So it kind of marries the two together. It's just kind of cool.
When
Oh,
go ahead, Paul.
I was just gonna say that's one of those. That's where I came about to learn about your work, and I shared Sad Little Man with as many people as I could because I had been laid off from not taking the jab, and lots of people would come back to me and be like, how can you insult Fauci? He's like this godlike figure. And now a couple of years later, people are like,
Yeah.
hey, Fauci was a pretty bad guy, wasn't he? And I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, but the art, the truth of your art maintained its truth the whole time. And
Mhm.
it's really useful because you can use that in place of a conversation that might get too heated. You're just like, hey, check out this song. Let's have a conversation
Mhm.
about it after. So I think it's really
Right.
what you created there. And I think
Thanks.
it lives on even as people change and evolve themselves. They can go back to that song and have a new experience and new realization that they might not have had when they were blinded by fear and authoritarianism.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks
I
a lot.
I
Yeah.
also think it's noteworthy that you're a musician who knows how to video edit, right? Like audio editing, I
Right.
could dig. Like, of course, you're a musician, but video editing and
Mhm.
especially that type of style, I think
Yeah.
shows your proclivity to just learn cool stuff, and then learning cool
Mm.
stuff, you put some of that together. I have some questions about your production process,
Mhm.
right? Um, do you have a whole team of people that helps you produce your music, or are you sitting in a computer taking your vocals and putting instruments that you've
Mhm.
recorded and like, because it's
Yeah.
very rich. There's
Thanks.
multi layers to it, and
Mhm.
usually that's only a high end producer or a really talented musician who knows their stuff. So I was trying to discern
Mhm.
what section you were sitting in.
Well, it's I straddle both of those things. So everything that came out on Silent War, on the Silent War album, was all recorded at home. It basically just set up almost the same way I used to record music when I was 18, just recording out of the bedroom, very raw and straightforward, very traditional in the sense that a lot of the songs are just live takes. And I would just play the song until I felt like I captured something. Since Silent War, I've put out a few singles that have been partnerships and collaborations with other artists that I had met throughout that era, and guys with pretty cool credentials. So I put out a song called "Ain't No Rock and Roll," which I worked with Chris Whalen on that, and had some stellar Nashville guys on that. But Chris is like a number one country songwriter. So that was pretty cool to partner with him, to knowing he was like-minded. Everybody that backed that track was a like-minded musician, believed in what I was doing, and that's been very important to me. If I do partner, with somebody and collaborate, that they believe in actually, what I'm saying in the song. And then there's been a couple of other tracks that I've worked on. Liars, Cheats, and Crooks and Counterfeit World came out last year that were um, I had Pete Parada from The Offspring played drums on that track. He was kicked
Because he
out
didn't
of
take the jab,
he
right?
didn't take the jab, and Greg
It's my
Camp
dude.
from
He's right down the road here. We've hung out.
oh
He's
is he
our Tuesday night meetup group. He's down in Franklin, just down.
oh nice
Up
yeah
here.
he's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
best
Yeah, he's
like so
awesome.
so the band The Defiant, if you follow those guys, they're kind of like a super group of guys that got
Awesome.
kicked out of their bands for not complying. I got to know them really well, and they're all fantastic guys. And yeah, so Pete from The Defiant is on there as drums, and Greg Camp, who used to be in the band Smash Mouth, he produced the last couple of tracks. And
Who's the
you
bass
know,
player?
I had Mark White on one of them, who was in the band Spin Doctors,
Oh,
and
right on.
he played
If
on
you
Liars, Cheats, and Crooks.
dun, dun, dun,
Yeah,
dun,
he was
dun,
in that
dun.
band, and he another cool guy. All these guys are they're the remnants of what was punk and rock and roll. They were the real deal. And that's what I love so much about getting to know them, because I don't think I would have even have made that connection in our
But they did
previous
a
life.
character building thing, and then when you are
Right.
be bold and mighty forces come to your aid. That's what happened. Do you
Yeah,
know Frank
yeah,
Kavanaugh from Filter?
yeah.
All right, that's what I was thinking.
Hmm.
Bass player for your supergroup.
Yeah. We've had a few conversations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the great thing, about that whole era, is the artists that did speak out came together and created new art, and art with substance that meant something. To me, it felt like an investment, of, you might not get this now. Maybe in 10 years, it'll mean something to the rest of the world. But if you do get it now, then it makes it that much more special. So, but yeah, it's not just me. Frank's been putting out music, and The Defiant, like I mentioned. Joseph Arthur was another friend of mine. who had been through the ringer. He had, a good several decades, quite a successful songwriter, and had a big smear piece written about him in the LA Times once he started speaking out. And there's a lot of really great talented artists out there. I mean, Scott's even got his album out, and
Yeah.
these are such great artifacts of the era. There it is.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks
Rock and
for
roll, brother.
plug, dude.
Yeah.
Scott collects skills like Trump collects bills. I don't know. I was trying to make it rhyme, but
Dude, hey, that's a
I'm
good one.
behind. So in your songwriting, Brad, does it all just come to you in rhyme, or do you have concepts and ideas and then you make it rhyme? Like what's your process?
My process is it comes when it comes, and sometimes I think with a lot of what happened on Silent Wars, like titles, which was new to me, like I'd get an idea for a title, God Help Us All, or Sad Little Man, Jesus, What Happened to Us. They sort of came to me as a title, and then it sort of thought about it as a book, like what's in that book, and then writing out. To me, what was so different about all that stuff was that I really put all the weight into the lyrics, and I wanted you to be able to read the lyrics on their own without the music and then still work as a thing. Whereas previously, I'd sit and write a song, and maybe the lyrics were okay, but it was kind of like it all had to be together in one thing. And with this, I kept it very, straightforward with the songs, as far as the chord structures and stuff. Like a lot of it was three chords, and the truth was basically the idea behind
The
it.
Bonoism.
Yeah, it was like, well, there's a lot of rallies happening too, and I thought like, as my notoriety on that side of things was getting picked up, and people were writing me saying, "Hey, I found your music." I wanted to keep those songs simple enough to where if you had a guitar and showed up to a rally, you could play those songs. And a song called "I Will Not Be Leaving Quietly," which to me was like, for everybody that was showing up to a rally at that time, if you had a guy with a guitar and you had a trash can next to you, you could just bang on the trash can a steady, 4 beat solid, and just play those songs. And so that was sort of the idea behind those. And sometimes you start a song, and it just sounds bigger to you, and that's why I ended up working with guys like Greg and Chris, and on those other songs where I was like, this feels like a bigger thing, and I'd like to have guys that can do what I can't do on it. And but yeah, when I write, it just that was something I did really appreciate about the creative process of the Silent War songs. Is I wrote "God Help Us All," and that's kind of where I thought it would end. I put it out and just vented, and then I lost a bunch of fans, gained a bunch of new fans, and I felt like I need to keep writing these songs. And so I wrote "Jesus, What Happened to Us" after that, but that didn't come until about 3 or 4 months later. And I would write these songs when they came and felt right. And I didn't like force I didn't force anything, like, okay, now I'm Mr. Protest Artist and I got to write these songs, and one a week or two a week or once a month. I just sort of let them flow and come. And so by the time, that album came together over the course of a year and a half, and then I realized, okay, I've got an album here. And if you listen to the album top to bottom, they're in the order that I released them. So it kind of tells the story of me as a songwriter, of what was happening in the world. And yeah, it's an interesting little artifact of that time. And I'm very proud of it.
You should be proud of it. You should also be proud of some of these tweets I see you got going on over here. Let me show the audience so I don't leave them in suspense. This one right here, like, did you just did you think of that and do it? Or did you see someone else be like, I could do that too? Because this is like timeless.
No, I started. So this evening, this news about Biden comes out, and
Yeah.
I'm all of a sudden seeing all these people who screamed F Joe Biden for the last 4 years turning around and all instantaneously, like, I'm praying for the Biden family. I'm like, what? what just happened? Like, and I'm getting, and people are not happy with me for calling Joe Biden. All I'm doing is posting reminders of who this guy is right now. I'm just like,
Does the tweet above it have anything to do with the tweet below it?
yes,
This one right here? Yeah,
yes, it does.
I thought
And
so.
so the like people seem to think like you have to choose. You can either pray for Joe Biden or you can wish him death. I'm not saying do either of them. I'm just
Yeah.
saying let nature take its course, and his evil's in God's hands, and he's got to answer on the other side of things. But to sit here and all of a sudden show compassion to a guy that was saying, his patience was wearing thin on you a few years ago, or he was, trying to dupe you into a winter of severe illness and death. Or if you look at
It was like a year
all,
ago he did the cornholio at
all
that
of the things.
with the Empire lighting,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
he
yeah.
was
Oh, yeah.
in
The
a
big
Star
red
Destroyer.
picture,
I have a
right?
T-shirt we made of that,
Yeah.
or maybe it's from
That,
Housekeys. I forget.
all the sniffing of the kids and all the all of the
The
people, all the
diary,
rapists he let
the
cross over
laptop.
into the country.
Yeah.
Like, do these things not count for nothing? Like, you don't have to try to, for the sake of your own ego and virtue, sit there and turn around and make yourself this glowing beam of Christianity. I'm a Christian, but I'm not going to faux compassion over this guy right now. I'm imperfect just as much as the next person, but it's like, I'm not wishing him death, but I'm not wishing him well. He's done a lot of very bad things. So, if Fauci comes out tomorrow and says, "Oh gosh, I'm dying," am I supposed to turn around and be like, "Oh, I feel really bad for him after murdering all these people over the last, several decades"? I'm not going to do that. And I just, these are the hard conversations I think we need to have as a community, because I post stuff like that, and all of a sudden I'm the bad guy because I'm like, you need to look at yourself and just be honest. Let's be real here. Like, if he was going to jail right now, which would not end well for him, it would be a death sentence. Everybody would be like, he's going to jail. But because it's prostate cancer, everyone's like, oh, well, nobody should have, And I feel like, it's another thing where we're, like I said earlier, we're caught up in this show, and the show is now, people are involved in the show where we've got influencers who need to show their, the side of them, that they're a better person. And, we all know we're better people than but, but really don't pretend, don't, showcase it in that way. You know what you did, what he did, where you're at. We all know where we're at on the spectrum of things. You don't have to lift yourself up for the sake of your own ego.
I think it started when he campaigned from his basement or whatever back in the day. Like there were signs all along the way that this guy is not necessarily the best candidate we can have leading the country, red team
Mm-hmm.
or blue team. I think the
Mm-hmm.
Democrats had other people that were more competent. They could have, there's a guy, Kenneth Chenault from American Express. They could have ran him as president. A lot of people probably would have voted for him. Right. There was a
Mm-hmm.
number of people that they had, but they chose him for a reason. And it might also have to do with his long history going back with some of those people that are in the deep state. And they're like, this is our
Mm-hmm.
guy. The deep state
Mm-hmm.
used him, and they got a lot of stuff done because the chief of staff was making all the decisions and doing all the stuff the whole time. He was like the real president in a
Mm-hmm.
house of cards type way. So I think it is good that you provide a mirror with your art to reflect what's going on, because you're basically outside the cave taking your art and sending it to compete with the shadows on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And like,
Right.
this is
Well,
more
that's
realistic, what you're showing there.
right. Yeah, that's what I feel like art needs to do again. Anyway, it's like that's the responsibility we have. We saw that so much in the '60s, where art was a reflection of its time. And artists, they weren't afraid to speak up. And we're seeing that now with Bruce Springsteen, which I think is funny because he walked himself into a mess now, and now he's got all of his peers standing, in solidarity with him, which I think is funny. But that side of things is not afraid to speak their mind, and we shouldn't be afraid to speak our mind, but we need to be truthful about it. And that's my whole point. Like I'm on y'all's side. I want this administration to be a success, and I want our new mission for health to be a success in this country. I'm for those things, but we have to, if this is going to be a different 4 years, it has to be different, and we can't just accept things playing out for the sake of I don't know, comfort or whatever it is. And we also don't need to play along with the show. And I'm seeing that, when I see stuff like this with Biden, where all of a sudden, we're trying to lift ourselves up as the better people. It's like, just look, let's just take it easy here. You don't have to do that.
You don't have to have an opinion on everything.
You don't have to. And that's, I catch a lot of flack for that too, because I am so, focused on the COVID era. I've made that's my message. I don't really speak up on much else. People are like, well, you didn't say anything about this or that or the war or whatever. I don't want to have an opinion on. You don't have to know my opinion on that. You don't have to be seeking out an opinion from somebody to validate what you think. I'm just saying what I think and putting it on the internet because I've got this thing in front of me, as we all do. But we have to learn to not be looking to validate our own feelings. You can just, I miss the old world pre-Trump, when people could get along and have different opinions, and we could still be friends or have constructive conversations. And
the media did a pretty good job of poisoning the well. You got to admit.
What's that?
The media did a pretty good job of poisoning the well.
Oh yeah.
They told one side's, a set of stories that they could never see the truth from the other side. So,
oh yeah,
that happens.
Yeah.
Does anyone ever accuse you of black pilling?
Yeah, I get that all the time.
Because, where did that come from? It's just a new conspiracy theory, moniker.
Yeah.
And I saw people trying to put that label on Whitney, and I'm like, what is this whole black pilling thing? It's like, just you don't have to be
another
100%.
label.
Yeah, you don't have to be what is it, like MAGA or bust, right? Like if things line up with the agenda, great, and if they don't, you should be pointing them out.
Right.
Hey, we got a bunch of foreign aid going over here. What about people in this country? What about our veterans? What about our homeless? What about our single parents that are struggling? That's a lot of billions of dollars you're putting over there. Do we have an interest in that as Americans, or is this the deep state interest using America as the proxy to do these things? And once people start to discern through the lens of freedom and slavery instead of red team, blue team, I think they have a chance to discern what's going on.
Yeah. And I think that's been part of my journey too. If you had, I grew up in Texas. I'm still here. I have very conservative, thoughts and opinions on things, but I've worn out. I don't, over the last year or so, I would say, I find myself drifting more and more into just the open, whatever the spectrum is, and just saying, look, all these labels are getting tiresome. And I noticed that when I would be critical of Trump on anything, and then all of a sudden I get dogpiled on, I'm like, hey, I'm just saying, he still hasn't taken, responsibility for the shot. Like, that's all I'm saying. You don't have to get mad at me about it. I'm just saying we should probably have him address it. I want my leaders to say, hey, I messed up. Don't you? I want them to have that humility. It makes them a better leader. And
you should talk to his scriptwriter. They could write that in.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's just a lot of issues. So I find myself drifting, and yeah, I do. I've never once been a part of I don't think I've ever once said red pill. If I have, I've referenced it as far as, I did make a post where I said not too long ago, red pill, blue pill, black pill. There's white pill. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in any of it. I just want us to really start looking at what the situation is. And we get so much funneled into our faces every single day that sometimes you have to take a step back and try to remember what happened a week ago or 6 months ago. How many of you remember Chinese weather spy balloons or all the train derailments at this point. Like we all forget this stuff and it goes away and gets swept under the rug. And, if you remind people of these things too often, you become a negative Nancy and people don't want to, I had somebody the other day, they were like, you're the most negative account that I follow here and you're whining all the time. And I'm like, my retort was, I'm posting the same stuff I posted 4 years ago. And do you want to know why? Because nothing's been done about it. I'm still waiting for that accountability and reminding you that nothing has been done about it. That's the only difference, is that now it's 2025, and that should be alarming to you. So yeah, it's funny to see people get so upset, but at the same time, it's the internet. So what are you going to do about it?
I was going to grab the real Anthony Fauci. And it's like when RFK Jr. wrote that book on Fauci, people thought something was going to happen. And then there's the Wuhan cover up by RFK Jr. And then there's the
Mhm.
truth about Wuhan by a whistleblower from inside EcoHealth who's like, Peter Daszak and Fauci are doing it. And still, crickets out there. So
Right.
I think it's to like lay it out for the audience. Blue pill is you believe the schoolhouse rock. This is how government works. Red pill is like the Federal Reserve is a foreign entity that took over our money printing, right? Black pill is we're 40 trillion in debt. There's nothing we could do even if we know the truth. And white pill is what if we paid off the debt with a new form of currency and then ended that form of currency and made another new form of currency, completely decoupling our system from that system. And then we don't need electricity to run Bitcoin. We could just have our own money back. We could have, so like there's various uses for those handles, but to use them as pejoratives instead of just indicators of a position, I think is also probably not that good. But I have spoken at the Red Pill Expo, so I could be biased.
Well, no, I mean, these are all things that I think, I've certainly felt a part of those communities in or I would say the red pill community I feel a part of, but I've never really use those terms to describe how I feel. Because at the end of the day, they are just labels. And I think that's one of the ways that it's, those things are used to divide us, and that's one of the things that's so hard to watch right now with, the medical freedom movement in Maha is I've been a part of those movements and now it's becoming parsed up, and there's certain figures coming into play and you go, if you question them, then you're not on board with the agenda and you're not part of this group over here anymore.
Definitely needs to be called out because it's no different than a lot of other times in history. That group that was persecuted then gets into power and they get all corrupted.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to tell people to be aware of is, once certain movements, grassroots movements get to a certain degree, you have to keep your head on a swivel.
Yeah.
People are going to come in late to the game and you owe it to yourself and all the work you've put into it to say, well, where were they before? What's their story? Let's find out. Why are they speaking up now? What are they going to do about it? And these are just questions that I am constantly asking myself. And so, I come from the entertainment industry where a lot of ego and BSers are, and I'm always looking out for those kind of characters in this arena of politics. I'm not even a really political person. I just, continue to sort of speak up for what I believe in, but I wouldn't consider myself political. But in the political arena, I do think that we all owe it to ourselves to ask ourselves is who we're seeing in front of us, a person that we can, I don't even want to say trust, but somebody that can help. I don't think you should trust anybody that's up at a certain point. I think I don't know.
Well, I think the problem is
fumble over my words a little bit.
I think the problem is the schooling system has made people such that they are eager for authority to take care of them, and they lack the self-reliance and capability and confidence and experience they need to actually be free, and that keeps a lot of people enslaved. And I think there's a turnaround point for it because people are now figuring out they can use the internet to like fill that gap. And when they do become more competent and informed, like I gave up on politics for a long time while I studied politics and political history, but I personally did not participate in politics from like 2004 to 2014. I also didn't have a cell phone. I was like off the boat. I want nothing to do with what's going on. Here's what I figured out. Politics is other people getting together to talk about how to take away your freedom. So if we do not keep an eye on them and even maybe go like press against them, they're going to continue having meetings to take away our freedom. And they have done it systematically after 9/11, just as surely as they've drained the value out of this country with the Federal Reserve over 100 years. Look at that graph. It's no different than putting a pump on your pool and emptying it by volume over a period of time. It's the same graph. They're doing it all over the place. And once we notice that, we don't have to say, oh, geez, we should just give up. We say, oh, we could do something about that. Now that we know about that, we can start to fill the gap and become more self-responsible and responsive thoughtfully to these situations instead of reacting how they want us to react, which is in fear and begging them to take more power.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's where we are. Keep the pressure on, don't let up now just because you feel like there's people that you can trust or rely on in there. They haven't done anything really to earn your trust. So just keep the pressure on. That's a lot of the reasons why I say what I say is I might be wrong about certain things, certain assumptions, but I'd rather keep the pressure on and know that I kept demanding what I wanted to see out of the administration than sit back and go, well, we got to wait, we got to give it time. Just keep the pressure on because we don't have forever. It's like the Epstein thing, right? Like the girl that just died a few weeks ago. That was my first question was, would she still be alive if the Epstein list had actually came out?
Exactly.
But all of a sudden she was hit by a bus, and then a few weeks later she's not here anymore. And this is why you can't wait. This is why these things need to come out. And if this is going to be a transparent administration, if I get some things take time, but those names can come out. Let the public, the truth will take its course. The truth will reveal what the truth is, and that's all I want to see.
I think the difference between you and most people out there, especially most musicians, is that your standards and your expectations are higher. That's when when you're tweeting and it seems like criticism is like, well, I'm not saying they're too high, but if you're unhappy, you might want to adjust your expectations and expect less out of these people.
I know. I often, it's funny you say that because I often think that I'm like, I often want to just post like raise your standards, like expect more, like we deserve more, and we are trained to expect less. It's called I have a whole theory on it. It's the fast food burger theory, which is like we're so complacent with mediocrity, like we'll get a fast food burger and it won't look like the picture. We'll accept that. And then it won't really even taste that great. We'll accept that. And they put mayonnaise on it when you said that you didn't want mayonnaise on it. But we just continue to accept mediocrity, and our standards are not up there. And if you look back, or even, back to the early 1900s and the standards of art and culture and the design of buildings, we're not progressing as much as we think that we are just because we all have an iPhone in our hands. So
look at people how they dressed back then. They had like spats and tucks and tails, and like average people dressed a lot better than average people today. You see a guy my age and he's in sweatpants and a t-shirt out in public. There are people like just a generation or two before us that would never leave without slacks and a cuffed shirt or a jacket or whatever. Like Father Knows Best, that whole show, like dude comes home, takes off one jacket, puts on another jacket, then that turns into like Mr. Rogers with his sweaters, and now it's like dudes in like t-shirts on Joe Rogan.
Yeah, it's just a slow degradation of our expectations, I guess.
But that makes stars like you shine even brighter, right? When it gets dark, that's when we notice the bright lights of like there's someone saying some truth, right?
I hope so.
Yeah, there's a rhymey saying like stars are only bright at night or whatever. But the idea is you can't see a spark unless it's in the dark. That's my point. That's
I
what I was trying to
like
get.
that.
Hey, Paul, before we let Brad go to bed, because I know he's in Central Time back at Sense, like he's had a day already, and this is a workout. So, Paul, do you have any questions for
Mm.
Brad?
Um, I guess I was gonna ask, like, at
For an
what point?
autograph? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, like at what point? You ever met somebody who believes pro wrestling is like real, and they're just convinced, and they're like, if Hulk Hogan or if Macho Man could just get like the title, everything's gonna be okay in wrestling. I feel like we're marketed a lot of saviors, and those saviors like weave really like comfortable stories that are like a lot of times far from the truth. So more than a question, I just want to be like, thanks for having the standard of truth and not caring about earning internet points or virtue signaling for adulation and validation, because it's not an easy thing. But there's so much truth in your art that I think you've got a good foundation of integrity to stand upon. So yeah, I follow you on Twitter and just find you say a lot of the stuff that I would like to say directly to somebody, and but I just don't have the wherewithal. And so yeah, thanks for speaking for a lot of people that don't always necessarily get to share that with you.
Have a voice.
Thanks. Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
I always try to say like the edgy thing, and it's like, well, Brad's already said it, so damn.
It's funny because I feel like, I don't know, the last couple months I've been like, I'm done with X. And then I'm like ready to just stop posting. And then something will happen. I'll be like tonight with Joe Biden, I'm like, what's happening? And then I just go on a tirade. And then people are mad at me. And,
And then you
I'm just
leave,
like,
and then you leave, and they're just mad, and
yeah, I
you've
know.
left the room.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, I have this understanding that a lot of people, I guess, don't get. And to me, it's just the internet. Like, and that's something that drives, my whole psyche is that I've got a home with a wife and kids that love me. And at the end of the day, that's my world. That's reality. That's where I live. And if that's okay, nothing else really matters. So I will just say what I say and put it in my art, say what I say on social media. And if you're mad and you thought I was somebody else, which I seem to be getting a lot lately, is like, well, oh, you seem to be forgetting that, all your supporters are Trump supporters. I'm like, look, hey, I'm just I'm just critiquing, I'm not trying to cause a fight. But that, people get mad at me. I'm like, if that mattered to me, I would have never have spoken out in the first place. But you have to have that perspective of grounding and knowing that, like, at the end of the day, that comment that's gonna, piss you off, it doesn't matter. It just wafts away into the wind, like the rest of history, like we were talking about.
I mean, what's it worth if you start capitulating to keep that entire audience? Maybe you only need 80% of that audience that identifies with logic and reason. Maybe you don't
That's right.
need the irrational MAGA or die type people because it's like when the dude does something wrong, you want me to ignore that? No, thank you. I don't see how that
Mm-hmm.
benefits me or my family or my community or my country. So I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
ignore it. I'm probably going to say something about it. I might be funny. I might not. I might try to be funny. It might, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Right.
to be able to express yourself these days is a unique thing still in not just American history, it's like world history. Most of the time, saying things like you'd said get you up on the gallows, right? And we might
Yeah.
have been through this process many times before. And this is the one time we can say stuff and not get hung for it. We either hang together or hang separately. That was a thing not too long ago. So I like to think that, you know, the best people are brought out by these situations. And without the tyranny, a lot of people would still be in the mundaneness of like, I'm going to use a Matrix metaphor because we talked about Red Pill. They're like the Thomas Anderson that never like searched for Morpheus. They're like
Mm-hmm.
waiting for their adventure. They're waiting for life to like, but they're waiting for Godot. It's never going to happen without them doing something that's courageous and take action. And I think that
Right.
you pivoting from like you got a comfy cozy, like you're making music and it's popular and it's out there, and you're in the system, and then you put one foot out, and then you pull both feet out, kind of. Do you still
Yeah.
like work in a traditional system, or is this kind of like made you persona non grata?
Well, I always sat on the outskirts the of the system, if you want to
Anyway,
call
yeah.
it that. Yeah, no, but I mean, like, I think that that was part of my journey. I mean, I look back on that. I feel like it was all divinely led because there's certainly a lot of moments in my career where I felt like I might have missed the boat on something by not taking that one opportunity or going with that one label or something. But I'm glad I missed that boat because it made me who I am and made me ready for this part of my career. And I get to stand on, get to stand up straight knowing that I've never had to kowtow to somebody else's message, and yeah, I hope more do that. Revolutions have started for a lot less than what we've been through over the last 5 years, and I feel like we shouldn't be afraid as we the people, moving forward and raising those expectations we were talking about.
They went to war over a 2% tax on a breakfast beverage. What do you think they'd have done if these people tried to straight up kill them with an injection that takes out their immune system?
Yeah, well, you know what? They would have gone straight to social media.
Hey, Scott, thank you for lining up Brad for tonight. And thus, we get to introduce his work to our audience if they didn't already know about Five Times August. Um, do you have questions before we plug his sites?
I mean, pretty much everything I wanted to say, I said. I got his album right here, you guys, Silent War. I bought this from him at Music and Sky Festival in California last year. And yeah, you can see all the songs on the back. So, as an independent artist, independent musician, I just want to say, you guys, it's so important to support independent artists, independent musicians. And so, go support independent artists, independent musicians, and go follow Brad, keep up with his work, share his work. That's the most important stuff. Is share it, and then just do what you can to support independent music. So there you go.
I've got him over here on the X. Brad, where else can people follow you or listen to more of your music? You got a YouTube page over here too. I'll pop that up. Boom.
Yeah. Check out fivetimesAugust.com and you can get CDs, records, even put Silent War out on cassette tape. So if you like the physical music format, check out the website. And yeah, I've got a YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. I'm on all the social media platforms. I'm also over on Rumble if you don't like YouTube. So you can find me out there, Spotify, Amazon, iTunes. It's all out there. So yeah, please support the music. I appreciate it. And yeah, thanks for having me so much. This was a fun conversation.
Oh, and you're going to play us out tonight. We got Liars, Cheats, and Crooks that's going to play us out
Nice.
later. But that's foreshadowing something that's many hours away, probably still. Brad, thank you for making it live tonight and doing it live. It's a good workout.
Absolutely.
Hopefully, it wasn't too like triggering of your complexity. But I think the depth of the conversation has now got the audience more interested. If they're not familiar with your work, it's not just music. There's intellect and substance and passion and heart, and it's coming from a father and a husband who's concerned for not only his family and his community but also his country. So you're concerned with the lives of your fellow Americans and people around the world who are struggling against slavery and tyranny all over the place. So I thank you for doing what you do, for doing it in an inspirational way. And three chords of the truth that came from Bob Dylan, not Bono. So I'll just self-correct on that before someone hits me in the chat. I was thinking Rattle and Hum, but then I was like, that's a Bob Dylan song cover that Bono does. So I put it together, but I didn't want to interrupt earlier. Thank you so much for hanging out, and you're welcome to come back anytime you want, bro. And when
Right
you
on.
have something to promote or concert or anything like that, we are here to help you. And thank you for your performance in Tennessee with Kurt and Scott and
Oh,
everybody that was
oh no,
down
he
there.
wasn't there. That
Oh,
was
he
that was
wasn't there.
no,
He
that wasn't
wasn't there
Brad.
for that.
No, he wasn't there for
Oh,
that,
obviously I
unfortunately.
wasn't there for that because
But
I only saw pictures. But I
I was
thought,
there
okay,
in spirit.
But he was
fair
there. He
play.
was there a few years ago with Ryan. That's cool. We were talking before the show, and there might have been some confusion there.
Yeah, that's where I
He
got
played a
confused.
show with Ryan here in Nashville, like 2 years
Christian.
ago, like 2022. I think it was like right after I moved here. I think it was like 2022. So anyway,
Hmm.
that's what that was. But yeah, no, this most recent event we did, sadly, maybe the next one.
All right. And do you have a
Yeah, I'm
booking
trying.
agent or do we contact you to book you when we have events?
You can contact me, and that's the way I roll. So
Fantastic, dude. All right.
yeah,
Well, it's a pleasure to make your
cool.
acquaintance. Big fan of your work.
Yeah,
And I'm also I was interested in your process and how you get it out there. And I think that's a big inspiration to other people who are just about at the point where they need to do the same thing and say, you know what, if I keep going along to get along, we're all going to end up in tyranny. So thank you for being bold. And I think Mighty Forces come to your aid when you do so.
Well, thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Brad. Peace, dude.
See you later.
Twice a year, I teach a course called Autonomy. It's a 12-week course. It teaches leadership, entrepreneur skills, executive skills, all these types of things that I saw were taken out of our education system in order to make the schooling or indoctrination system that we've all probably went through. And it has served us well enough to be interchangeable cogs in the machine of the globalists. But if we want a homestead, if we want write our own ticket, work from home job, work from anywhere type of situation, they're not exactly handing those out at the end of college. They give you a piece of paper and they're like, good luck. So reality is dropping us off here, but the demands of reality are up here. So I created Autonomy to help people close that gap for themselves so they can level up their skills to the demands of the situations that life is putting in front of us presently. Life's demands of intellect and understanding precision and complexity are ever increasing. The schooling didn't prepare us for it. The media is not going to do anything but reinforce what schooling prepared us for. And so we're going to have to take a leadership position and take steps off the beaten path to kind of blaze our own trail in life. What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.